Should we get some coffee?
Sure. Where?
Every time you hear that laughter and those lines again, do you see a part of your youth returning? Friends was never just a simple sitcom. It is Monica's purple-doored apartment, the central perk corner with the legendary velvet sofa. It is also the place where crises sometimes originated only from a Rachel accidentally cooking a dessert mixed with beef because the cookbook pages were stuck together. Despite bringing a feeling as familiar as a real home for the past decade, it is that very closeness that made us accidentally overlook the moments the actors completely broke the script right in front of the lens. From real accidents on set to quick-witted responses, here are 20 moments you might have missed in Friends. 20. Rachel's real terrified reaction to Ross's falling down the stairs prank. This is one of the classic scenes of Friends, a frame that almost everyone who watches remembers Ross's mischievousness. However, perhaps not everyone realizes that the moment Ross slipped and then tumbled down the stairs actually did not happen as we thought. Looking at the screen, everything is so natural that almost no one suspected it was not a real accident of Ross. In this scene, Ross staged a fake fall by throwing a mannequin with the exact same size and clothing as himself down the stairs right in front of Rachel. But the truth is, Jennifer Aniston was completely not informed in advance about this prank. The entire crew and David Schwimmer kept the secret until the last minute to capture the most authentic surprise. Right at the moment the mannequin plunged down, the entire screaming reaction and the horrified face of her on film were completely real reactions. If you look closely, you will see that extreme panic was so authentic it makes viewers shiver along. This is one of the moments that captured the most authentic surprise of an actor before a hypothetical, dangerous situation. It is those small and truthful fragments that turned Friends into a part of the soul of our generation. 19. The cursing line about the toilet seat, added by Chandler on his own.
And you left the toilet seat up, you bastard!
And you left the toilet seat up, you bastard. As soon as Chandler Bing utters that indignant sentence, we know immediately that this situation has gone beyond the prearranged lines of a play. Chandler is the type of character that everyone thinks they have understood too clearly, from his constant sarcasm to his clumsy fears before commitment. However, there is a moment when his anger carries a breath of everyday life more than ever. While standing and watching Joey perform a play about the character Drake Ramore instead of being just an outside spectator, Matthew Perry decided to join in by spontaneously erupting with a criticism of men's living habits right in front of the camera. At first, hearing it was just a spontaneous scolding, but it was the dissonance between the deep acting script on one side and the harsh reality on the other that created a strange attraction. Because in the middle of a scene happening according to a template, a very real-life reaction broke out, making the audience at the studio explode because of too much excitement. Perhaps it is that improvisational charm, always knowing how to turn serious things into ridiculous ones, that makes Chandler become closer and more vivid than ever in our memories. 18. The slip of the tongue about Donald Trump that caused Chandler to be teased by co-stars. If anyone asks me which scene I remember most in Friends, it is definitely the moment Matthew Perry completely lost control, before his own disobedient tongue, making the phrase "blue blazer back" turn into a silly "blue blazer black."
I don't know, but Donald Trump wants his blue blazer black.
Instead of stopping to re-record, his co-stars proved they were truly trolling Friends when they immediately grabbed this mistake to tease him. A play not in the script erupted on the spot about Donald Trump demanding that black coat back, putting Chandler in a difficult position. Matthew Perry, at this point, could no longer control the situation. He had to both struggle with his slip of the tongue and improvise to call Joey an idiot to fend off the public humiliation from his close colleagues. It is strange that a technical error seemingly worth discarding became so vivid. It was the understanding and sharpness of the cast that turned a moment. Matthew Perry could not control himself into a moment that is still mentioned a lot forever after. 17. Phoebe and the bold wrong number voicemail for the character Bob. In your impression, how is the character? Phoebe Buffay? To me, she is always a free soul, a bit quirky, but extremely warm until I witnessed the moment she completely shed her innocence to make a bold wrong number call. The story began when Phoebe was trying to call a friend, but instead of the other end picking up, she connected to the voicemail of a stranger named Bob. Instead of being embarrassed, apologizing, and then hanging up as usual, Phoebe chose to go with the flow. She nonchalantly treated the stranger named Bob on the other end as her ex and began to whine and confide in an extremely sexy tone. She was not afraid to describe in detail a hot night and her own wild desires for her former lover. The point is that all those words that make listeners blush were thought of by Lisa herself at that moment to portray a Phoebe who never acts according to the norm. It was this spontaneity that created an instinctive and unrestrained Phoebe Buffay. She didn't care who Bob was. She was just enjoying being able to play a bold role in her own wrong call. That unexpected daring made the scene extremely vivid, because it showed that Phoebe is the type of person who can turn any incident into her own stage to show off her rebellious ego. 16. Close-up of Joey's real shoulder dislocation accident during filming Friends is a comedy, but besides the hearty laughs, there were also tears that had to fall. That is what happened to Matt LeBlanc right on the set. In the scene where Joey and Chandler compete for the armchair, Matt performed a jump over the coffee table to grab the spot, but unfortunately the wrong landing posture caused his shoulder to be completely dislocated on the spot. Instead of stopping, the crew had to face the harsh reality that the actor was forced to wear a shoulder brace for many following weeks. To save the situation and keep the film flow natural, Matthew Perry had a quick-witted improvisation when revealing to the doctor, also a character in the film, that Joey was injured due to being engrossed in jumping on the bed. This breakaway by Chandler not only helped hide the real-life accident, but also forced the writers to rewrite the content of later episodes to legitimize Joey's shoulder brace. Looking back at these footages, I cannot help but feel pained, knowing that behind Joey's innocent smile was Matt LeBlanc's effort to suppress the pain to finish the role. It was those silent sacrifices and extraordinary situational handling that made the movie become truthful and close, like everyone's own life. 15. Ross's improvisation when Marcel the monkey clung tightly to his leg. Did you ever notice this scene when Ross is trying to act serious? Marcel the monkey suddenly clings tightly to Ross's leg and performs sensitive bouncing behaviors. This laugh and cry incident pushed David Schwimmer into an extremely awkward situation right in front of the lens. Instead of calling cut to re-record, David Schwimmer proved the class of a true actor when deciding to go with nature. He both kept the frustrated facial expression of the character Ross and shouted straight at Marcel's face, asking the monkey to stop clinging to him and stop pumping for at least 2 seconds. All that discomfort, helpless expression, and spontaneous scolding were David's real reactions to the mischievous harassment of his four-legged co-star. Because of this extremely authentic and humorous interaction, the crew decided to keep the entire scene in the official film instead of editing it. It is truly hard to completely control nature, so we just have to rely on our genius. David. 14. Rachel makes a disastrous cake because the cookbook pages were stuck together. There is a moment in Friends that makes me remember forever the legendary clumsiness of Rachel Green. Right after she confidently brought the dessert out to invite the group, everyone had to freeze before an unthinkable combination. It was a layer of jam, a layer of custard, a layer of ladyfingers, and then suddenly a layer of beef sautéed with peas and onions. The appearance of salty ingredients lying between whipped cream and bananas created a culinary disaster in the true sense. Witnessing that sight, Jennifer Aniston's co-stars were truly shocked. The forced smiles, the suppressed expressions when having to taste this horror dish were completely natural interactions before work that was beyond endurance.
The beef?
But the truth behind it is much more interesting. The cause of this confusion was that the pages in the cookbook, which was a prop on set, were actually stuck together. Rachel accidentally flipped from the sweet trifle recipe straight to the middle of the shepherd's pie savory cake recipe without knowing. Instead of stopping, the crew turned that technical incident into a part of the story. And perhaps things like that are what make the very unique attraction of this episode. If it were you, would you dare to try this unique dish of Rachel 13? Chandler's spontaneous question changed the echo of the final episode. The ending of Friends was originally meant to be immersed in the regretful silence of a parting, until Matthew Perry uttered a sentence no one thought of. In the final footages, when Rachel chokingly invited the group to go for a final coffee before leaving the old apartment, Matthew Perry arbitrarily added one word, "where." This was a subtle joke that came up right on the set, because everyone from the cast to the audience knew too well they would go together to the familiar Central Perk shop. This breakaway by Chandler was not in the script at all, but it immediately softened the somber atmosphere covering the set. Thanks to that innocent "where" question, the sadness of parting suddenly gave way to a gentle smile. It reminds us that even if the apartment is empty, even if each person has their own direction, their humor and friendship are always there, as constant as the familiar shop corner itself. Perhaps that was the most meaningful gift Matthew Perry gave to the audience, a warm echo to close a brilliant 10-year journey, making us smile even when having to say goodbye. 12. Ross's controversial suggestion about his ex-wife Carol's gender. Although there are spontaneous moments that delight the audience, there are also times when the spontaneity of the actor makes the audience fall silent. That was when we witnessed the ridiculous frustration of the character Ross Geller in a desperate effort to save a broken marriage. Right after Carol came out as gay, Ross made a suggestion that made the atmosphere suddenly become awkward. He convinced his ex-wife to come back by asking her to temporarily set aside her sexual orientation and put a pin in being a lesbian, a metaphor to imply that she should temporarily forget her true identity to continue being his wife. Carol had to respond realistically that he just needed to find a woman who actually likes men and everything would be fine. The special thing is that this controversial detail was completely David Schwimmer's improvisation right on set. Not in the original script, no one asked him to make such an irrational and selfish suggestion. It was simply a very natural reflex of a hurt man, stubbornly clinging to what no longer belonged to him with the craziest arguments. As for you, what do you think of this scene? Do you agree with David's crisis handling phase in this scene? 11. The dramatic twist from the confession of sleeping with a gynecologist's wife. Besides familiar names to us like Rachel Ross or Monica Joey Tribbiani's ups and downs acting career, is always a treasure trove of laugh and cry situations. The peak was the play within a play scene when Joey's character, Dr. Drake Ramoray, suddenly confessed to having slept with another man's wife. This line was originally only used to push the climax for the soap opera, but it accidentally created a troublesome twist right on the scene. The drama was pushed to the climax when it led to a disastrous identity confusion with a real gynecologist who at that time was just trying to have a private conversation but was pulled into a whirlwind of unfair adultery accusations. It was Joey's excessive immersion that turned a common misunderstanding situation into more dramatic and awkward than ever. The awkward moment between the lines on paper and reality in real life created a satirical laugh about this actor's job. It turns out, in the world of Friends, Sometimes people do not need a perfect script, but only an enthusiastic fool who dares to turn every trouble into a beautiful memory for us to smile nostalgically every time we remember. 10. Chandler begs Rachel to let him go. Do you remember Chandler and Rachel were the two pieces that least often collided? But whenever they stood next to each other, they created laugh and cry situations. One person always uses sarcasm to hide awkwardness. One person always tries to maintain a perfect image, but often encounters trouble from out of nowhere. But in the scene where Chandler is handcuffed to a chair and tries to beg Rachel to let him go, that relationship exploded in a way the script never fully intended. At that time, Chandler poured out a series of desperate, spontaneous promises, from cleaning the toilet to arranging all the photos into albums, just hoping to be free.
Totally.
I'll clean your bathroom.
That is a lovely pantsuit.
I'll put all your photos in albums. Just please let me out of here. This detail was originally just a pleading monologue. But Jennifer Aniston improvised extremely quickly by responding realistically that even if he washed for a month, the bathroom would still be dirty, and she determinedly would not let him go for fear of the boss discovering. This sharp dialogue was completely the improvisation of the two actors right on set, turning a passive situation into a charming battle of wits. Even though they were just unplanned additional lines when watching again, we suddenly realize the life of the movie lies in their strange chemistry. Even in Chandler's most desperate moment, the friendship between them still appeared vivid and truthful than ever through unannounced slashing matches. 8. Lisa Kudrow mockingly imitates Ross's bagpipe sound humorously. The music of this movie is also one of the things that makes me miss it, not only because it is good, but also because of a moment that couldn't be more peak. Everything began when Ross Geller confidently brought out the bagpipes and asked the whole group to sing along to his piercing melody. The original script only required the remaining members to act bored or respond in a forced way. However, right on the scene, Lisa Kudrow decided to take that endurance to a new level by starting to mimic that head-splitting sound with her own singing voice. Lisa's creativity was not announced in advance, and it was so destructive that it made all the other actors struggle to hold back their laughter until their faces turned red right in front of the lens. If you look closely, you will see Jennifer Aniston had to bow her head down and cover her face with her hands because she could not maintain a serious look before the extremely charming improvisation of her colleague. If I were also present at that concert that day, I would probably have laughed out loud and ruined the entire scene. Our friends' actors are truly talented, aren't they, 7? Rachel's powerful shout to rescue her best friend. Besides the witty lines, I'm always impressed by how the actors protected each other. Right on set sometimes with an attitude so fierce it is hard to believe. In the scene where Rachel has to prevent the assistant Sophie from entering the office to discover Chandler being handcuffed to a chair, Jennifer Aniston unleashed a powerful script break. Instead of a gentle prevention as intended, she shouted, "Sophie, sit down!" with an extremely harsh face. This sudden ferocity was completely not in the original acting instructions. It was Jennifer's spontaneous reflex to save the awkward and somewhat embarrassing situation of her co-star Matthew Perry. This shout was so effective that the actress playing Sophie actually had to freeze and sit down immediately because she was so startled. That unannounced authority turned a scene that could have been ruined into a moment, showing the sharpness and great situational control ability of the character Rachel Green. 6. Chandler ridicules Joey's naivety through advice on cotton swabs. You have to stop the Q-tip when there's resistance. This highly damaging sentence actually never appeared in the original script until Matthew Perry decided to turn it into a legend. That was when Joey sank deep into silly misunderstandings about timelines and ages in 1990. Instead of only reacting with a sigh as intended, Matthew Perry unleashed that spontaneous closing blow right on set. The sarcasm implying Joey accidentally poked his ear too deep and damaged his brain. was so sharp it made Matt LeBlanc freeze for a moment, creating a precious pause for the character's naivety. This intelligent spontaneity turned a common dialogue into one of the most iconic comedy bits of the movie. It not only showed Matthew Perry's underlying charm, but also clearly depicted the affectionate, slashing nature that Chandler always has for his closest roommate. And how do you feel about these two characters? Truly adorable, right? 5. The moment Ross seriously disciplined little boy Ben outside the script. Ross Geller is always a character who makes us laugh because of awkward situations, from wearing leather pants that are too tight to whining about his broken marriage life. However, there are also times when Ross shows us a completely different side from what we usually see. It happened when child actor Cole Sprouse, who played little boy Ben, accidentally performed an unexpected naughty action while the camera was running. Instead of focusing on the scene, the boy repeatedly put his hand into David Schwimmer's pocket to find candy and toys. Instead of maintaining the usual clumsy look or waiting for the director to call cut, David Schwimmer chose to handle it like a father in real life. He grabbed Cole's hand, pulled the boy close, and truly became serious with a very real-life authority. All right, that's it. Come here. You are in big trouble, young man. This sudden seriousness and decisive discipline were completely not in the original acting instructions. It was no longer Dr. Ross with dry theories, but the instinctive educational reflex of a grown man for his son. This moment was so authentic that the crew decided to keep it because it accidentally created a deep family bond that no script could stage more perfectly. 4. Monica and the spontaneous dance with a turkey on her head. One of the craziest scenes of Friends is the moment Monica Geller appeared with a giant turkey placed neatly on her head. In the Thanksgiving episode, when Monica decided to do everything to soothe Chandler, the original script was meant to only stop at her appearing with that weird prop. However, Courtney Cox herself made this scene immortal by creating a swaying, silly dance right on the scene. Without any prior staging or rehearsal, Courtney completely shed the image of a perfectionist, organized Monica to transform into a clown in the true sense, just to push the emotions of her co-star and audience to the highest level. This bold image sacrifice brought an unexpected result. It made Chandler unable to hold back and utter the first "I love you" confession, turning a somewhat bizarre joke into one of the most classic romantic milestones of this couple. 3. Phoebe's classic scream when discovering the secret. My eyes, my eyes. This hauntingly obsessed scream is not only one of Phoebe Buffay's most iconic lines, but also the result of a peak improvisation from Lisa Kudrow. Originally, when Phoebe accidentally looked through the window and caught the scene of Monica and Chandler sharing affectionate gestures, she had to act surprised and confused at the shocking secret of her two best friends, as in the original script. However, right on set, Lisa Kudrow decided to push that surprise into a humorous psychological trauma with maximum volume. This outburst was so strong it overshadowed all previously intended lines, making the entire cast and crew struggle to hold back laughter to not ruin the precious scene. Lisa's instinctive spontaneity turned a common secret discovery into an unforgettable milestone of Season 5. The Phoebe-branded closing line not only created a gut-busting laugh, but also clearly depicted her somewhat eccentric personality and intense emotions. 2. Joey creates the twin brother character Hans Ramor himself, who says Joey Tribbiani is not an acting genius. There are times when this guy's creativity has gone far beyond what the writers could imagine, and Hans Ramore is the most precious evidence for that dedicated trolling. The story is that to save and explain the wrongdoings of the character Dr. Drake Ramore he was playing, Joey decided to unleash a spectacular trick right in the scene he arbitrarily made up an evil twin brother named Hans Ramore. Joey claimed that Hans was the one who impersonated him to sleep with women, a desperate but extremely humorous effort to protect the clean image for the character Drake. This script-adding performance by Matt LeBlanc was actually an innocent spontaneity, perfectly depicting Joey's both enthusiastic and a bit stoned nature towards the acting profession. This unannounced breakaway turned a dead-end situation of the play within a play script into an interesting highlight, making the audience unable to stop laughing at his unlimited creativity. Looking at how Joey seriously protected his role with the most irrational arguments, we realize that his attraction does not lie in superior acting techniques, but in his sincere heart and unique, extraordinary moments that turned mistakes into legends. 1. The cold and the playing under the fountain created the legendary intro. This is the intro that went into the history of Friends the Frame, where as soon as the song "I'll Be There For You" rings out, any of us can imagine the scene of 6 friends dancing under the fountain in the middle of the night. But perhaps not everyone knows that the moment full of energy and joy was actually the result of an exhausting endurance in real life. The truth is, the whole group was fighting the bone-chilling cold of 4 a.m. When filming this scene, the original script did not at all require the actors to jump into the water or splash water on each other so enthusiastically. They had to record continuously for many hours, people soaked and shivering under the California night weather, which was not pleasant at all. At one point, when the fatigue reached its peak, Matthew Perry decided to break the tension by starting to wave his arms and legs sillily and tease the co-stars. Immediately, like a chain reaction, the whole group responded and began the chaotic playing under the freezing water. If you look closely, those radiant smiles and those water splashes did not have the director's calculation. It was the moment they completely shed the script to warm each other with laughter, turning an unexpected incident into a true celebration of friendship. The director was so impressed by this natural connection that he decided to keep all those spontaneous footages to make the opening for all 10 seasons. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss our next videos. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next video.